Hello, everyone. My name is Ahmed Atef. I'm a graduate of George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, in the field of international education and educational leadership. The title of my presentation is Thinking About Peace Education in the Republic of Yemen, or shortly in Yemen, as everybody knows, a country that's located in the Arab Peninsula, and the country that's been experiencing war for almost eight years now. The purpose of this study was to explore the perceptions and experiences of the faculty members of education in 4 universities in Yemen, in different parts of Yemen, actually. 2 of them are located in the north part of the country, and the other 2 are in the south. And these universities are Aden University, Taiz University. Aden University is in the south, Taiz University is in the middle, Hodeidah University is in the west, and Hadramaut University in the east of the country. The conducted in-person interviews with the faculty members in these 4 universities were aimed at understanding their thinking about peace education, its implementation, and also the training of the pre-service teachers in primary and secondary schools to teach values of peace, tolerance, and acceptance of others. This is the first study of its kind, actually, that takes place in these 4 universities in Yemen, where the focus is to highlight the issue of peace in that country, and also to prepare or find ways to prepare educators for the post-war transition in the country. Since 2015, as everybody knows, the Republic of Yemen has been subjected to a devastating war that has been plagued the people in both of the north and south of Yemen. And we've been seeing humanitarian tragedies. And the most people who are affected by the war are children. And the United Nations are trying its best to bring everybody to the negotiating table. And the government of the United States as well is doing its best through the special envoy, Mr. Tim Linder King, to convince everybody to come into the table. The UN envoy, Mr. Hans Grunberg, has been in position for about a year now, and he has been very active in convincing everyone to come to peace and talk about peace in the country. Nevertheless, the war continues. The significance of this study is the timing that it comes in. It's really in a time where everybody is getting tired of the war, but everybody in the country is in need of the regional as well as the international support to convince them to negotiate a peaceful settlement for the crisis. And coming back to this study, so it's a qualitative case study, and it began in the summer of last year. And there are 21 participants in this study from the faculty members of those 4 universities, in addition to 5 coordinators who have been appointed by the principal investigator of this study, which is me, to help with access to different universities and with recruiting the participants to give the interview for the study. The literature is really full of different perspectives and different visions on how peace education can be carried out. There are, for example, writings by Ian Harris and others. So, for example, Ian Harris, 2014, provided a concise history of peace education practices that go back to centuries as mean to resolve conflicts peacefully. Harris mentioned that efforts of many early indigenous tribes, including in African tribes as well, long time in history, have been successful in establishing kind of mechanism to resolve their conflicts. In addition to the religious teachings that also helps in promoting peace. He also mentioned that the religions, all 5 religions and others as well, played a role in the consciousness of the people to establish peace. And for example, he mentioned in page 11 of his article that the central purpose of Islam is the promotion of peace and fellowship in the world and the development of understanding among different races, religions, and tribes. Yemen is a Muslim country, and we'll come back when the participants were interviewed. So many of them have mentioned the role of Islam, the role of religion in helping the process of peace and harmony in the society. In the 19th century, many peace movements organized in several European societies, and their rules were strengthened during the World War I and World War II. Throughout modern history, women in particular played a critical role in advocating for peace and educating the new generation the values of necessity of peace to solve differences and avoid wars. So we can mention among the prominent peace and human rights advocates were the Austrian Bertha von Suttner, born 1843 and died in 1914, the American Jane Addams, 1860 to 1938, the American Sojourner Truth, who born in 1797 and died in 1883, so a long time ago, and also the Italian Mary Montessori, 1870 to 1952. Their contributions well documented in the literature as being advocates for peace and peace education as well. The UN Charter, on the other side, defined the role of the United Nations as a driver for peace and cooperation among nations. Since its foundation in 1945, the United Nations focused on a variety of projects related to world peace and well-being, such as, for example, the Associated School Project in 1953, which was meant to study disarmament, the international economic order, and human rights in schools throughout the world. UNESCO, as specialized body of the United Nations, this is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, has a lot of contribution to peace education, and it adopted in London on November 1945, actually November 16, 1945, adopted its constitution. And in the constitution, it was spelled very clearly that UNESCO contributes to peace and security by promoting collaboration among the nations through education, science, and culture in order to further universal respect for justice, for the rule of law, and for the human rights and fundamental freedoms. The severe impact of the ongoing war in Yemen can be easily felt in the fields of education and health services. According to Zaham, Babalati, and Lashwal in 2020, Health and education have been among the hardest hit sectors. The failure to take immediate actions to rebuild these sectors threatens the future of the country and the next generations. That was in page 1114 in the reference, the lesson. Peace education and culture of peace are two terms that go hand in hand in many of the literatures. So what is meant by peace education first is that I can refer here to Harris 2014. He defined peace education as the process of teaching people about the threats of violence and strategies for peace. UNESCO has expanded on the definition of peace education by putting forward what is known today as the framework of culture of peace. The United Nations in general has accepted the contributions of UNESCO in that field, and also in its General Assembly Resolution 53/25 on November 19, 1998, states that the culture of peace consists of values, attitudes, and behaviors that reflect and inspire social interaction and sharing based on principle of freedom, justice, and democracy, all human rights, tolerance, and solidarity, that reject violence and endeavor to prevent conflicts by tackling their root causes to solve problems through dialogue and negotiation, and that guarantee the full exercise of such values. Peace education does not mean to teach people the skills of resolving conflicts and avoiding violence only, but also entails creating a transformative culture among individuals and organizations to uphold the values of peace, cooperation, and coexistence as being basic elements of their everyday culture. The method I used for this study was interpretive case study, qualitative research in the 4 universities, focused on purposeful selection of the participants, because I was looking for people who are knowledgeable enough to contribute to the purpose of the study and to answer the research questions. And there were 3 research questions put for this study. The first research question was how educators in colleges of education perceive peace education, tolerance, and accepting others. The second question was how current conflict impact education and what can educators do to support peace. And the third question was what are the elements of peace education, training, programs, and curricula that can be suggested in Yemen. The study design utilized, as I said, the interpretive method in qualitative research. And in this method, the researcher interviews the participants and explore in depth their perspectives and the meanings they make regarding the research questions. Participants' individual experiences, perceptions, thoughts, and constructed meanings occupy a prominent status in the final findings of this study. The participants' perceptions and thinking about peace education in a country at war as Yemen reflect the commonality of the group thinking regarding the reality of education in that country. Choosing 4 sites, north, south, east, and west, would add to the value of the perceptions and the contributions of the participants, because they'll be having various perspectives according to what is happening in their own universities and own regions. And as Baton 2015 said or confirmed, that exploring various perceptions and thinking of participants regarding the study questions is a common approach for interpretive inquiry. Research sites and selections are within the design, as I explained earlier. And participants have been both gender. Out of the 21, I had 5 male coordinators, and then I have 6 female faculty members from different universities, the 4 universities, and the remaining were male faculty members. The findings of this study indicate that the need, actually, there are so many perceptions that I was really be able to enlist and show as an evidence of the different thinking on how peace education in Yemen can be implemented and how people are thinking about peace in general. But the finding of this study has 3 parts. The need to define the outcomes of peace education on individual and community levels. Second, the role of teachers to support it. And third, the required elements for peace education training and curriculum that could be suggested as a follow-up step to this research. This is in brief about the study. Thank you very much for your listening and for being patient with me. Thank you.